What's up YouTube, and welcome back to another episode of the Octagon Kitchen. Today's episode is sponsored by CT Board of Chefs, but I'll let you know a little bit more about them later. I got my hands on a really interesting fruit, the jackfruit, so I kind of decided I wanted to make some sort of vegan pulled porkish thing, maybe some sort of like Puerto Rican Pernil. And Joelle requested Taco Bell Nacho Fries, so today we're going to be making jackfruit nacho fries.
Know that they ride or die. I keep boys by my side. Know that they ride or die. I keep boys by my side.
Day we hustle, but the night we
Know that they ride or die. Know that they ride or die. I keep boys by my side. Know that they ride or die. I keep boys by my side.
Day we hustle, but the night
Boys by my side. Know that they ride or die. My name came up a lot, it sounds more when I was not around. Certain people that I know, they ain't no longer about. My name came up a lot, it sounds more when I was not around. Certain people that I know, they ain't no longer about. My name came up a lot, it sounds more when I was not around. Certain people that I know, they ain't no longer about. My name came up a lot, it sounds more when I was not around. Certain people that I know, they ain't no longer about. Know that they ride or die. I keep boys by my side. Know that they ride or die. I keep boys by my side.
day we hustle, but the night we
Know that they ride or die. Know that they ride or die. I keep boys by my side. Know that they ride or die. I keep boys by my side.
day we hustle, but
Know that they ride or die. Cold, these brothers my guys. Know that they fly. Know that they fly. Know that they ride or die. Cold, these brothers my guys. Know that they fly. Know that they fly. Know that they ride or die. CJ Ike, they ain't no longer about. They ain't no longer about. They ain't no longer about. CJ Ike, they ain't no longer about.
day we hustle, but the night we
Boys by my side. Know that they ride or die.
Today's episode is sponsored by CT's Board of Chefs. Co-founder Mark lent me this beautiful handcrafted cutting board to show you guys today, along with some of his homemade and locally sourced beeswax and beeswax oil to keep your cutting board clean and safe. I'm excited to form this new partnership with CT Board of Chefs. I can't wait to show and use more of his products in my videos in the future. Thanks, Mark. Alright, so now we got everything prepped. We're going to have to go through a few different steps. This dish is going to be built in layers, so we have a few things that we're going to want to do. As you can see here, I have some of my vegetables cut up for my queso. Also, I shredded some of that Violife cheese. And over here, I have the jackfruit along with some aromatics I'm going to use to flavor the jackfruit. I separated the seeds because I heard that you can actually roast them, so I'm just going to put these to the side for now. I actually want to get these potatoes inside some room temperature water. The water is going to help sap some of the starches out of the potatoes, helping it crisp a little better once we get them in the oven. Now we cut up a bunch of extra potatoes because we decided that we want to freeze some later. As soon as I put the potatoes in the water, you can see some of the starches coming right out. It's gonna be a little full, but once your potatoes are fully covered in water, you can just set them to the side. They need to soak for at least 20 minutes, which gives us plenty of time to cook our jackfruit. So because the jackfruit we bought was very young, it was still very fresh. You can tell by how white the pods are, they're not very yellow. it's actually going to take a good amount of time to cook the sweetness out of this. So the first thing we're going to do is actually toss the jackfruit, and then we're going to give it a nice pan sear before we add the vegetables and kind of build our sauce around it. Because I'm going for more of like a Mexican style, instead of doing sort of like a barbecue sauce thing, I'm actually going to make a homemade enchilada sauce using my homemade seasoning. I'm going to be using this all throughout the episode to flavor every layer of my dish. I will leave the exact mixture in the description down below for you guys. It's a really versatile seasoning. You can use it on pretty much any Mexican dish. Alright, let's get started. Alright, so the jackfruit has been sauteing for a little bit, long enough where I want to start my queso. But first, I'm going to make my enchilada sauce. So I'm going to put some oil in the pan along with some of my Mexican seasoning to toast the seasoning, separate from the jackfruit. If it gets a little too dry, just add oil. Kind of want to get this perfect oil seasoning mixture. Just like that. Then I'm going to put about a tablespoon of tomato paste in there. Cook it nice and well. Now that that's all nice and brown, we can take our broth. Down a little bit. Now, the goal for the queso vegetables is actually to dry all of these vegetables out so they get nice and small before we make our cheese sauce. So it's just in the pan with a little bit of oil, and then I'm going to give it some salt. Start dehydrating the vegetables. So behind me I have the jackfruit and the queso vegetables cooking, both on a low temperature, the jackfruit on a simmer, and the vegetables just kind of on a low and slow cooking basis. We're trying to get the queso vegetables to be very dry before we start to make our sauce, so that the little chunks stay inside of the sauce without taking up too much room. In the meantime, we took our potatoes out of the water. We rinsed them off well to get all that excess starch off, and now we're just going to shake and dry these in batches. We want to make sure it's very dry so it can crisp really well. About 2 tablespoons of butter in here. This is the vegan butter. I'm going to have it melt down, and by the time it gets pretty much completely melted, we want to add some flour. You just want to coat all of the vegetables in your flour, but you don't want to use too much. A few seasonings on top, just to help blend and color our cheese sauce. Chili powder, Nutritional yeast, which gives it the cheese flavor. Mustard powder, ground mustard, garlic powder. It's a little bit of turmeric for the color. You'll want to make sure to cook your flour and your spices really well. You don't want any chunks. It's got to be well bonded with the butter. I've never tried this with vegan ingredients before. I'm just adapting from how I would make my normal cheese sauce. I'm just going with it. Looks about right though, right? That the flour is well cooked in and so the seasons are a little bit brown. I'm going to be using some cashew milk to make my cheese sauce. I chose cashews specifically for having a thicker texture. Now you want to use about a cup. I don't measure anything. It's all about how it feels. I like 2 cups. So our jackfruit's almost to the point where we're going to put it in the oven. We have the oven preheated to 350. After we pat the potatoes down, we're going to put the potatoes and the jackfruit both in the oven at the same time. Now that our potatoes are well dried, they're almost ready to go into the oven. I'm just going to use a little bit of vegetable oil because of the higher smoke temperature. Just splash my hand a little bit. And I'm going to use our seasoning to coat our fries. Now we're actually going to use the rest of the seasoning after they're done cooking before we do the second cook, where they will be cooked at 2 different temperatures in 2 different ways to get that maximum crispiness. After they're well mixed in, just try to get them in one single layer, and then they will go into the oven on the top layer in the middle rack. And they're going to be in there for about 20 minutes. That our jackfruit is nice and dried out. Just going to spread them out a little bit, and we can just throw this whole skillet in the oven. So now that our cheese sauce is starting to bubble with our milk in there, I'm going to start to add my Violife cheese. This is their vegan sharp cheddar, just in batches to the warm mixture. You don't want this to be too hot. It shouldn't be boiling. We want to just incorporate our cheese slowly. This is where you're going to feel out the mixture between cheese and milk. You'll add more of the cashew milk if it's too thick, and more of the cheese if it's too loose. But always keeping it at this low temperature. If it starts to boil, it can actually ruin the oils and the cheese, making your sauce separate. So our queso is done. I'm just going to keep it on the lowest temperature possible so it doesn't start to solidify. And it's been about 20 minutes. If your fries are a little thicker, definitely do it for like 25. I just poked this with a fork and it went in nice, so I know that they're the right texture on the inside. Now I'm going to take them out of the oven entirely and bring our jackfruit up to the top. The jackfruit's going to need to roast for probably another 20 minutes or so. We'll check then. These guys I'm going to leave on the side for now. About 10 minutes before the jackfruit is done, I'm going to put them in the air fryer for the second cooking. Alright, so I'm refrying the french fries in the air fryer in batches, just because there was a good amount of fries. They've been in there for about 10 minutes now, and our jackfruit just came out of the oven about 30 minutes later, so it's nice and tender. While the fries are in the air fryer for another 10 or so minutes, crisping up, I'm just gonna pulse the jackfruit a little bit to try to get some shreds to make it more of that pulled porky texture. Just like that, everything is done. Our fries are nice and crispy. We used a couple of forks to get the pork into smaller bits. I have my garnish and my queso, so now I just want to put all this stuff together and let's make something fire. So fries on the bottom, and of course some of that queso on top. Nacho fries with the Pernil jackfruit on top. Nacho fries! This is exactly what you like.
He always makes exactly what I want.
Ooh.
That queso, so good.
The two-step cooking thing, like, so I bake them at 350 for like 20, then let them cool, and then air fry them at 400 for like 15. Oh, it's got me breathing heavy. Oh.
It's like the Taco Bell spice.
Alright, we should probably end the video before it's like 5 minutes of us eating. Thanks for watching again. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, all the BS with the YouTube algorithm. Definitely try to make this at home and let me know how it goes.
This is worth it.
The vegan queso recipe doesn't have to be vegan. You can just make it with regular butter and cheese, but the fact that it came out this good with alternative products is insane to me.